I always breathe a sigh of relief when this gospel is proclaimed and my parents are not here, so that I don't have to skirt around that whole question of being rejected by one's kin and family. Jesus is really surprising those around him because they have a preconceived expectation of who he is and can't see beyond the limits of what they know. And it's a fitting thing for us, this teachable moment about what takes place here, because it takes place in the synagogue. The synagogue was kind of the neighborhood religious gathering place. For those, the synagogues were in the villages and the towns far from Jerusalem and far from the place of the temple. The synagogues were originally conceived during the time after the destruction of the temple during the Babylonian captivity. And so the synagogue became a substitute for the temple. At the time of Jesus, the temple in Jerusalem was in existence once again. It had been rebuilt and restored. But the synagogue was the convenient neighborhood gathering place, especially for those who lived far away. And so here today we're speaking about the synagogue in Capernaum, up at the north end of Galilee. And it was a place that was at the same time considered holy, but also comfortable. And that challenge of how it is that we hear the word of God when we're comfortable raises great questions and challenges. And here is what Jesus is getting at for us today, that it's good that we are comfortable with the word of God. It is good that we feel at home in God's presence. The challenge is that when we become too comfortable with the word of God, we also can become complacent with the word of God, and suddenly no longer are open to understand that the Lord's word continues to challenge. And especially for us who are here day by day, we may think we know what there is to know. But the Lord's word is living and active. And there, those people who had the privilege to be present with Jesus, to hear him speak in their midst, they were closed because they were complacent, because they felt they understood. And the synagogue was comfortable enough that they did not allow the word of God to challenge them. That's a great reminder for us about how it is that we receive the word of God, with openness and not with any kind of preconceived notions of, I know what this word means because I've heard it before. Because those people there in the synagogue looked to Jesus as, well, I know what he's about because I know him. He's my neighbor. He did a job for me. All those kinds of preconceived notions that can close off one's mind. Let us be open to be surprised by the word of God. Not as though we hear it as though we haven't heard it before, because knowledge helps. It helps us to understand, to get into the word, but to be open to hearing it in the context of how we are today. How we might have heard the same word yesterday is different than how we hear it today, because our hearts have different needs. We have different expectations. Our prayer, our longing for God changes in every moment. And so it's a gift to hear the word of God anew, afresh, because that means that there is some new grace, some new blessing, some new gift of God to lead us on the path to heaven.